Welcome back to the podcast, Heal Without Harm. I'm Dr. Clayton Dir, physical therapist and the one bringing you the truth about the medical system. The stuff you won't hear in most doctors' offices. I have a guest on the podcast today, but it won't be our traditional interview. This will be more of a guided discussion based on points that I want to hit, but also my guest will be asking me questions on your behalf, the listener. She's bringing years of experience as an athlete herself and as a coach, and I'll be bringing the PT and research side of things. Together, we're going to help answer all of your questions and curiosity on pain, like why it lingers, how your mind shapes your recovery, and what you can do to finally move past it. It'll be Kate Jones. She's the owner of Foundations Fitness and head powerlifting coach at Friends University here in Wichita, Kansas. She has been a personal trainer for 12 years and enjoys helping people grow in confidence and in strength, mentally, physically, and spiritually, which I do want to talk about that today as well. Kate, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Finally, man, I've been knowing you for how long now? It's been a long
Years?
time. Yeah.
4 or 5?
Year.
We were supposed to have you on, and then entrepreneurship struck, aka your plumbing went bad in your
Which
building.
happens quite often, actually.
I feel like that was a couple weeks ago. When I went back and looked at it, I'm pretty sure that was like 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, March or April.
Maybe it was further. Yeah.
Crazy.
I don't know. I feel like I've been hosting this podcast for 3 months now, and it's been just over 6, 7.
6
like
months.
that.
That's it.
Yeah, I started January of this year.
Doing it forever.
I wish I was doing it forever. It's one of those things you like always want to do something, and then once you start, you realize it's a good idea. I didn't start earlier, kind of. You're like, maybe I wasn't that knowledgeable back then, so good thing I waited, type of thing. But back then, I had a bunch of stuff on like your experience as a trainer and like what you would try to teach people and like what you care about. And when I reached out to say like, hey, let's go ahead and get that back on the docket, you're like, hey, scrap everything you had before. Let's talk about something in specific. So I can kind of read off what you said to me, or you can kind of tell everybody listening, what are you wanting to focus on today? What is it that you want people to know more about?
Yeah, so we're going to talk about pain, and pain in the sense of not just the physical pain that we might experience with an injury or, trauma or anything like that, but pain in the mental sense, because I think that holds a lot of my clients and a lot of my athletes back. I have people come to me sometimes and they're like, yeah, my knee is hurt forever. That's just the way it is. And I'm like, why? Like, why are we okay with being in pain? And sometimes for years or months at a time. And I think, you and I chatted about this a little bit, but being the owner of your life and your choices and knowing that like you can change your circumstances if you want to. And if you have sometimes the means, I'm not going to lie, like I do think there is a financial side of things that people have to consider when they're talking about physical therapy or, going to doctors or things like this. But, just the mental side of like knowing that your body is resilient and that it wants to heal is a huge part of continuing to not only age well, but be like okay in your everyday life.
Yeah, for sure. One of the words that you used was psychosomatic pain, which of course with my like background in education, I know what that means, but what does that mean to you, or what do you think it means? And then I'll ask some follow-up questions on that.
Yes, I'm going to go into a little bit of background about my injuries to kind of put this into context, because one of the first major injuries I had, well, I guess not the first one. The first major injury I had, I dislocated my elbow when I was a cheerleader at Butler. So I was working on my round-up back handspring and just snapped it. Like my coach was even spotting me at the time. Like it was just the freakiest thing that ever happened. And I'd never had a major injury up until that point. So working through that and dealing with that, like it took months to get that thing back, right?
For sure.
And I don't know what actually was going on in my brain, but when doctors told me like, oh, you'll never be able to straighten out your elbow again, I was like, BS.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
I feel like that's the first fork in the road for everybody though. Yeah. Is that right there? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's like, is that going to be the end all be all? Like, are you going to listen to him or her and be like, okay, I got it, understood? Or are you going to be like, BS.
Yeah.
Like, try me.
It just blew my mind. I'm like, I'm doing all this physical therapy. Like, and I was like, no, I'm going to hit this physical therapy hard. I'm going to do it every single day. Like, and I did all the things that they were telling me to do. I think I just did it to a higher degree, maybe, or more often than maybe they recommended. But like, I can straighten my right arm just fine now. Like, you will not tell a difference between my right and my left. Like, and it's just, so I think that was actually, I'm thinking through my injury history, and that was actually the first time that I was like, no, like I'm not taking that as an answer. I'll never be able to straighten my arm again. Like that's dumb. So then fast forward to, I think it was 2018, I tore my left hamstring playing softball, which I'm not a softball player.
I remember seeing your swing one time. Respectfully, you are not a softball player.
My husband loves it, and I played it because he loved doing it, and it was side by side time and whatever. And I'm pretty fast. Like, I can run fast, but like it's not something that I do regularly. And so when you're stopped going, on the
Yeah.
softball field, like my hamstrings were not equipped to do that.
Yeah.
So I severely tore my left hamstring first. And when that happened, like I was seriously traumatized. I was like, my lifting career is over. Like all the worst case scenarios were going on in my head. I was seeing Zach Stuckey at the time at Optimal because he was there. And he was like, yeah, this is going to take a little bit. He's like, but you need to get on the recumbent bike. You need to, get it moving, yada, yada, whatever. I probably stayed off it for like 2 weeks because I was just so like scared because it hurts so bad.
The hamstring and the Achilles, like, I don't know, something about the backside of your leg feels so vulnerable, and so you tear that, rupture it, injure it. It's just like the heightened sense of fear is very normal.
Well, you can't stand up. Like,
yeah, and
like because it snapped and I didn't really knew what happened, and so then I tried to get up and I was like, oh crap, I cannot stand up. I was like, what did I do? And then Zach's like, well, you really tore it, like you tore it bad.
Yeah.
So like through that whole process, and it was probably a good 6-month process that it took me to really feel like I could trust it again, and I was at my full strength and all of this. But it was really kind of traumatic for me. And then a year later, I bulged a disc in L5S1. I was deadlifting. It was super light, like it's something I never shouldn't have been a problem, and I just wasn't respecting the weight. I didn't brace properly. Like I was coming back from vacation, and I wasn't, conditioned and all these things. It was a perfect storm. And I remember going to see Courtney about it, and he was like, oh, this is fine. We'll have you back to lifting in no time. Like, just very nonchalant about the whole thing. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like, okay. I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. Like, and I was like, all right. And I did everything he told me to. We're going through the nerve glides and everything that I need to get my body out of this protect mode, right? Because that's, to me, and that was the whole kind of trajectory that I'm on to get to my psychosomatic pain, like, definition. But, for the longest time, I felt like what I had was lingering pain in my back, and there's really nothing wrong with it. Like people walk around with bulges all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like you could not
I mean,
know
if you're
it.
over 40, there's over a 50% chance, pain-free, that you have one.
Right, and so you have to get your body and your brain to like trust you again, right?
It's almost like syncing them up, right?
Yeah.
It's like calibrating them.
Yep, absolutely. And it took me probably about 4 months to do that, if I'm being honest, because like one day I'd be great, and the next day like I'd be right back to whatever. And I was very guarded when I would work out. I was very scared that I was going to hurt myself again. Like all of these things kept going through my head. And then finally I'm like, we're fine. Like we're okay. Like, and doing all the PT and everything that I was told to do, like being very diligent with that as well, obviously is part of it. But, and then the last injury I just had, I tore my right hamstring. Okay. And the funny thing about that was it wasn't as severe as the left, I will say that. But as soon as I did it, like I was in the dugout pumping my leg. I'm like, nope, we are moving this thing. Like we are going to get it healed, and it's going to be fine because I'd already been through it. And I had already been through that process of you need to get that muscle moving in a way that is going to help it heal correctly, because my left hamstring, it's like this. Like even to this day, I have a huge bulge in my left hamstring because I didn't heal it correctly. Like it's there, it's strong, it's okay, but it's not like perfect, right? So when I did the right, I was like, we're doing this right. Like, and I was super aggressive about my PT. Like I was squatting the very next week, not lift weight, but like body weight squatting, like just trying to, and I would get to that point where, they say 4 out of 5 pain threshold or whatever, like maybe closer to a 6, like I was pushing that boundary of like, you need to just move it. Like you need to teach it how to do what it's supposed to do again. And so to me, I think psychosomatic pain has a lot to do with, number one, like, do you believe that your body wants to heal? Like, or do you think you're broken? Because if you think you're broken, you're going to be broken. Like
The mind's a powerful thing, right?
Exactly. And then the other side of that is the nerves and everything, and you'll get into the science part of this because I don't know all of that. But the nerves and everything, like there is a reaction, there's an inflammation, there's lots of things that react in a way that there might not necessarily still be an injury there, but your brain thinks there is, or your brain wants to protect you, and so it's sending signals. Like pain's a signal, right? It's not.
It is, yeah.
It doesn't always have to be like a traumatic injury. It's a signal from your body. So
I think that's good. There's like 7 different things you talked about that I'd like to hit on. I think one of them is scar tissue type stuff. So the left compared to the right, and then the second one is you attempting to push the limits essentially along the way. And so I'll talk about like a potential like threshold that you're trying to stick with. And so on the first one, the bulge. And so when we learn how injuries heal, I think the easiest thing to visualize is when you get a cut or a scrape or something, right? At first it bleeds and everything, and then your body lays down a scab. Well, when it's laying down the scab, your body's literally just chucking as much skin tissue and stuff to try to lay that down and almost like fill in the hole. And your muscle's not entirely different from that. And so you have this tear, whether it was a complete rupture, like, half the fibers were torn, whatever, and your body's just haphazardly like just trying to lay down tissue to fill in this gap. And so if you imagine like a hole in the ground and then a pile of like leaves, sticks, and everything else you can to like cover up that hole, it's not very pretty, and usually you have to put more than necessary because it's very unorganized. As you go moving, like you said, you're pumping your leg in the dugout, you start like doing glides, you start doing squats again, you start moving this tissue, but very light load. You're essentially like coming in and reorganizing that scar tissue or reorganizing that pile of leaves and sticks to where eventually, and I'm talking in a multiple month process, right, of just like a little bit every single day, you start laying that down smoother and smoother and smoother, and then you start to get this scarring that you almost can't even figure out where the injury was. And if you did it right, and especially with the less severe injury on the right side, it's probably looking more like that. Where, you see somebody, let's think of a surgical scar. You have some people are just, more likely to heal smoothly and others aren't. But when you do it right, you'll notice that the scar that was treated well with scar tissue massage and good movement and mobility and stuff, you'll find that scar is almost hard to see. And then you have other people who like, it looks bad. There's a huge gap, it's bulged up and stuff like that. And they probably didn't do what was instructed, but maybe they weren't instructed, or maybe they just have, a higher scar tissue laid down. So I think that's a huge difference between left and right, and why you still feel that bulge. It's not always necessarily a muscular knot. It may be a hunk of scar tissue type of thing. And so you may always be at a deficit on the left side because what used to be all muscle tissue is now essentially boogered up with a little bit of scar tissue. The second thing that with you trying to push the limits, ultimately, I think of it as like this exponential curve going from like bottom left of a graph up and to the right. My goal as a PT with any sort of instruction or care is to keep you as close to that curve as possible. We know based on just certain timelines of healing, each one of the tissues have a little bit different timeline, but it's going to gradually taper up and it's going to heal over, let's say, 12 weeks. If you don't do anything, you're not going to heal at all close to that, and you may never reach the top right portion of that graph. However, if you do everything a little bit too aggressive and too fast, you may accidentally try to go too much too fast and hurt and then have a small setback. My goal is to get as close to that as possible without breaking that like glass ceiling and doing too much ultimately. And so there's just so many pieces that it's fun to look back and be like, oh, here's where you should have done something a little bit different. Now, I'm not speaking from a place of like, you messed up. It's like, you don't know half of those things in the moment. I mean, just with entrepreneurship, you're like, I see why I should have maybe bought insurance, or maybe I should have, consulted a lawyer. But it's like, you might as well kind of go and like fly blind as far as you can and then ask for forgiveness instead of permission at times. So I say, I much rather would work with an athlete like yourself who's debatably too aggressive, and I can say, hey, let's do a little less. Here's why. As opposed to like, would you get your butt off the couch?
Yeah.
Type of thing. And I think that's, if I'm interpreting you correctly, I think that's kind of where we're wanting to go, is where, or how do we get someone to, how do we reshape maybe the perspective on the body will heal if you place the right stresses upon it. You're not broken, you're not torn. Pain doesn't necessarily equal damage all the time. And how do we go from there? And so now that we've got the psychosomatic somewhat defined and a little bit of background knowledge on it, do you have someone specifically in mind, like a certain type of story in mind, or do you see a certain pattern with your athletes? Like where are you wanting to go with this? Like what would you like to shift in these athletes' mindsets, or what would you like to fix if you could?
I think it's definitely the confidence thing. Misty Elliott, she came in with, she got a rod in her back.
Okay.
She came in to do a boot camp with me. Gosh, it's been 8 or 9 years ago now when she first started. And this boot camp was supposed to be very low impact, very like, it was for older women, really. And she came in and she thought she would never lift another weight again in her life, and doctors were telling her that. Like, she was very
you have like well-educated people with degrees and stuff telling you that information.
Yeah. She did a tire flip that day. And
nice.
she's never looked back since. And as you know now, like, she's a pro level powerlifter.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
she's got
squatting
like,
to death and deadlifting. Like, she's insane. I have another client, Jen Woods, who never thought, she's had knee pain her entire life. Like, she also has a rod in her back. Never thought she would squat below parallel. Never thought she would deadlift ever. Like, it was a mind game just to get her confident enough to pick up a barbell. Like, and now, like, both of them are just, and it's a confidence thing, and it's a no, my body is resilient, no, my body is strong, and showing them what they can do without, number one, without injury. So knowing how to progress somebody in a way that isn't going to injure them or isn't going to push them too far, I think is very important, because you have to gain that confidence, you have to gain that trust as a coach. But showing them that they are strong in different ways in order to get them there, in order to get them to say, like, oh, maybe I can XYZ, or whatever I thought I couldn't do before, like, now I can do that. And it's just insane to watch that happen. Like, I know what I'm doing as a powerlifting coach, but at the same time, like, when people actually do
Oh,
what
yeah.
you tell them to do and like follow the process and like start to gain that confidence, like, it's just, and not that we don't have setbacks, not that we don't, have pain or, tweaks and stuff here and there, but at the same time, it's just like, wow, like, look where you started and look where you are now. And stuff like that just tells me, like, no, you are strong, your body is resilient, it wants to heal, it wants to be in peak physical condition, right? Because that's what, like, evolutionarily speaking, like,
Yeah.
we need to be able to hunt and run away from things and like do it, and that's where our body wants to get back to, I feel like. And so if we
Yeah.
give it the opportunity to do that, instead of saying, oh, I had a back issue and now I'm an invalid the rest of my life, like, no, you're not. And that's not
Well,
what your body wants either.
the body is always like the body is never endingly adapting to the forces upon it. And if you lack forces upon it, aka you sit and do nothing or you do very little, your body's going to adapt to that, right? And so this momentum is going one way or the other. And when you're told by, like I said, highly educated people, degrees on the wall, saying you're never going to walk again, you're never going to straighten your elbow again, you'll never be able to squat again, I think that's a very short-term thinking, right? So when you hear that, most of the time I feel like it should be perceived, because they're not, a lot of the times these specific doctors that we're referencing as a group who say those things are probably not going to quit saying it. So you need to change how you perceive it, and or just simply get a second opinion and think, okay, in the short term, I'm not going to do this because it's going to hurt, right? The tissues aren't ready for it. But if we think about trying to like just simply mobilize a joint, right? Like your elbow is a great example, because joints are wrapped in something like what we call a capsule, which is essentially just a conglomeration of ligaments. Those ligaments are like very leather-like. They are supposed to be the brakes if your muscles don't do their job to like essentially prevent the joint from dislocating. And so those are supposed to be super tight. You're not going to stretch those overnight. I can't give you a 6-hour program and say, cool, it'll be stretchy in 6 hours. I need you to give it 15 minutes of love every day for like months. And it's mind grilling. So, I mean, for the most part, they're probably correct. You're not going to straighten that elbow up because most people aren't. And that's the other thing too, is like, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a part of the fringe that actually will do these things when most people won't. So for the majority of the people that are in that office, they're probably overweight, have 6 comorbidities, don't take care of themselves. And so for the majority of the people, he's correct. They're not going to do it. But when you actually put in a little bit of work or a lot of bit of work over a long period of time, the body is incredible what it can do, ultimately. And so, like you said, making sure you just do the little things over the long period of time, you'll change that. And when it comes to pain, I've got one person in mind that I'm kind of curious, just in general, your thoughts on. Since you have more reps and experience than myself, I'm curious what you would do with this person. So I had a late teenage female, came in with elbow pain. And I remember her father stopped in at Compelled Fitness, and he said, hey, there's a lot of people here who weightlift, and I'm sure they have a lot of injuries, but they keep weightlifting. Do you think you could help my daughter? And I was the 19th provider that had evaluated this gal, and she was under 18. And I just loved his way of thinking. It was so interesting. Like, athletes get hurt, athletes keep lifting. Maybe they should go to some place where they do that, And so the gal at the front desk gave him my name, and she came in, and pretty quickly we figured out that there's no tissue damage anymore. She had hurt her elbow maybe 9 months prior, had some sort of tendonitis, and it seemed like that had healed itself, but the pain didn't go away. And this is where we can get into the conversation of, is pain actually a correct indicator of tissue damage? And most of the time, yes, it's supposed to be, right? But you can have some false signals, and sometimes the brain gets so used to protecting, like you said, and having pain there that it doesn't know how to make the signal go away, even if the thing that started that process goes away. Mm-hmm. And so what I found was, after we got her just moving, because she had no strength deficits really, she lacked stability in the arm that I would argue is from disuse. But ultimately, like, tissue is fine. And I was even poking her. I was like, is this hurt? Does this hurt? Does this hurt? She's like, no. I'm like, so can you remind me when it does? And most of the time it was with sustained use of it. So like if she was like knitting, cleaning, sewing, doing homework, writing, anything over sustained periods. But ultimately we just took her through a strength program, a lot of talking, ultimately to get her to understand that. But I'm curious if that person just showed up and was like, hey, I have elbow pain for the last year. I'm a little scared to move it. From what you've learned, like what would be the first set of questions that you would maybe ask her? How would you approach her? Of course, from like a non-medical perspective, but just like, yeah, I've seen stuff like this before. Let's get after it. What would be some of the places that you would potentially start with that gal?
I usually start with strength. Like obviously, I'm a strength coach. Like
Yeah, for sure.
that's what I get down to. So like, hey, let's strengthen the muscles around it. Let's make sure the above and below. Like, what's the shoulder doing? Is the shoulder strong? Like trying to make sure that everything around it is going to be strong in the first place. Because like you talked about, from a stability standpoint, I think that's a big thing as well. We do when I see people with pain, especially when we're talking about like endurance, is what you're talking about, really, because it was with prolonged.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So like isometric work, I think is huge. You just posted the knee pain video of like,
Oh, yeah.
here, hold it here for however many seconds. Like that would probably be along my lines of thinking like, hey, can we, hold this for 20 seconds without pain? Okay, good, great. Like, why don't we progress that to 30 seconds or whatever? Like trying to get to the point where we're like finding that threshold, right? And where is it? And then pushing it a little bit further every time, just like we do with pain with an injury. Like we go to a certain point, okay, where's that pain threshold? All right, let's stop just before that and continue to try and push that threshold higher.
Let's go right into there. So let's say she or Misty or somebody comes in, and because I have another gal that I sent over to you, and it took me a year to get her to you, but I was like, just go in here because I know this will be like groundbreaking for you. But that person, whether it be knee pain, shoulder pain, elbow, whatever it is, comes in and they start to do the movement, and they're like, are you sure about this? Because this hurts. What do you say to them? Like how do you actually have them navigate that barrier of like, this hurts. Are you sure I can do that?
What does hurt mean, right?
Okay,
That
yeah.
is so hard for us as professionals. It's like, because we don't know what they're feeling. And so is it discomfort or is it pain? And like, does it go away if we stop, or does it, persist for the next 5 days? Like there's a difference between pain and injury, right? And I think that's a conversation that I have often is like, we can work up to a pain threshold of like 4 or 5 when we're doing, especially if we're not used to doing a movement, like squatting to full depth. When somebody says my knee hurts, I'm like, okay, well, let's, we'll go through those reps. Like we'll see what happens. Like it's not going to be comfortable. Like you're going to be uncomfortable because you haven't done it in forever. Like your joints are not used to moving like that. But we have to get our brain used to the fact like, no, this is okay. Like we're going to be fine. And so trying to, and I think Courtney is probably the one that taught me this, is don't freak out about it.
Yeah.
If you freak out, like your client's gonna freak out. Be like, that
Oh,
hurts.
yeah. Oh,
Oh
yeah.
no,
As the
stop
provider,
it.
yeah.
Like, oh no, that hurts. Okay, don't do it. Like, I don't hardly ever say that anymore. I'm like, oh, that hurts. Okay, what do you mean that hurts? Like, do you feel a pinch? Do you feel a stab? Do you feel a like? And trying to get to like, okay, that sensation might be XYZ or whatever. You know what I mean? So not freaking out about it, I think, is a really big deal. And having that confidence when they don't, like, I think that's kind of life changing for some of my clients, because they've been told their whole lives, like, if it hurts, don't do it.
Yeah.
Or just stop doing that movement if it hurts. I'm like, no, your body is supposed to move that way. Like, it was made to move that way. So if we're not, like, let's figure it out, because it can, and it can get back there.
And I think too, some verbiage that I found. Well, in general, I found it's all about perspective. Like you have to figure out their perspective. Like what? Okay, so if I poke you with a needle, we can both agree that's painful, right? But are you okay with me doing it? Yeah. Okay. Why are you okay with me doing it? Because you're not damaging me, right? But there was a scene. Let me jump over to another one. How much you can almost trick the brain. There's a scene in the movie Punisher. Have you ever seen that movie? So the whole premise is this guy's at a family reunion. Bad guys show up, kill his whole family. He was supposed to die, lives, goes back, and essentially hunts them down. So he's called the Punisher, right? But in that one, he was trying to torture this dude to get information out of him. Guy's hanging by his feet, shirtless, and he starts telling him, he's like, have you ever, like, do you know what it's like to get burned alive, blah, blah, blah. And he said, first, you're going to feel like ice cold pain, and then you're just going to smell like burning flesh. So he's like vividly explaining exactly what's about to take place. And then he's like asking the guy, and he's like, no, I don't know anything, blah, blah, blah. And then what he does is he grabs a popsicle. Of course, this guy can't see anything, the one being tortured. Grabs a popsicle in one hand, and he has a blowtorch in the other. On the desk is a piece of steak, a raw steak. And the guy won't answer, and so he slaps the popsicle on the guy's back. So the guy feels ice cold. And then he starts burning the steak with the blowtorch. So you hear sizzle, he feels cold, and he starts to smell like steak, essentially, like burning meat. And he is freaking out. Like, this guy is feeling the worst pain of his life, and he's probably picturing his back just melting, right? So he starts talking finally. Then what he does is he spins the guy around and just shows him the steak and then shoves a popsicle in his mouth. And you just see him like so almost embarrassingly defeated. And it goes to show that like your perception of pain is the most like crucial thing. So like you said, when you have someone say, ouch, this is painful, it hurts when I go down. The next question has to be like, what are you actually feeling? Mm-hmm. You know, because then it forces them to have to go through it. They're like, well, it's just pain. It's like, no. Does it feel like it's stretching? Does it feel like it's tearing? Does it feel pinching? Do you feel like it's going to snap? Do you feel like something's about to pop? Do you feel like you're going to buckle? Are you scared to move? And so you're feeling pain? Like, let's make this easier. What if I put this box beneath your butt? Squat down to the box. So now you know I don't have to get back up. I can just sit down. Maybe we go just single leg. Maybe we make it lighter. Maybe we reduce range of motion. Like, let's change this and see what's actually going on. And most of the time, the pain dissipates away. Or it goes down, right? Because the scary factor goes away. There's nobody blowtorching your back anymore. You're like, oh, you're just putting a popsicle on my back. Go for it. No damage is being done. Yep. So that's where, like I found on those, like you said, it's let's dig into this for a second. I think we're people like yourself, and I would like to think people like myself, what sets us apart is we're willing to have that conversation, right? Because when people hear, and this is what sometimes I wish I could call you something different. When I read, she's been a personal trainer for 12 years. Like, I feel like so many people are probably just going to write that off. Like, okay, cool. You tell people what to do, you know, at like the YMCA. Yep. And it's just easy to write off, but it's like, no, because most personal trainers are probably like, okay, we'll just do something else. And they move on, and then they get personally trained for 6 years, and they have the weakest legs ever in the world. And so let's go into fear avoidance, which is a fancy way of saying, like, I'm not going to move that way because it hurts. What are some common things in any joint, whether it be shoulder, elbow, knee, hip, or back? What are some common movements that you see people have a lot of fear avoidance? Like, what are some
squat
exercises?
Is number one. Squats and lunges. 1 and 2, lunges. Easily.
Not even deadlifts?
Easily. Not even deadlifts. Mm-mm.
What's so scary about them?
I wouldn't say most people I deal with, but some people that I deal with, like knee pain is probably knee pain and back pain are the two most common things that I deal with, I think, in my profession. But I don't know what it is about the knees. Like, it's just so, like, once you have knee pain, it's like you feel like you're always going to have knee pain. Or, like, oh, I couldn't lunge, 20 years ago, so I'm sure I can't lunge now, that type of thing. Like, I think there's a big fear factor with lunges, especially. Mm-hmm. So lunges and squats, easily, probably the two scariest exercises that I think my clients come into contact with.
Let's go into lunges. Somebody has pain or fear of having pain with lunges. What have you found to be some good exercises to swap in and out or help them like baby step into a lunge without pain?
Yeah, regressing range of motion is obviously the first one. So like we'll just get into a simple split squat position and just lower down. Like whether we're holding isometrics or, we've got the TRX so they can take as much of their body weight off to as they want to, or we're hanging onto a Smith machine out front so they feel like they're supported. Anything to make them feel a little bit more stable so it's not just them and their own body weight like out in space, like fighting for their lives, you know what I mean? So stabilizing, reducing range of motion, like those types of things are very helpful, especially when...
So I want you to picture a couple clients that you have or have had. I guess you have them now, but they started in that position. And fast forward a year, now they're doing walking lunges with dumbbells in their hands. They may have done a powerlifting meet at this point, or maybe they're just squatting to full depth. Maybe they're finally squatting with their body weight on the bar. What does that path look like from your perspective as a coach? Like, how does that feel? What kind of experience is that for you?
It really depends on the individual. Like, it's highly individualized, but I think it's a lot like that graph you see when we talk about success, because sometimes like they have a good week and they're like, yeah, this feels great. And then the other weeks they're like, man, I don't even feel like I can, get into that position anymore. Like, so it does go back and forth a lot, but I think just that gradual progression, and it's the essential foundation of everything I do is progressive overload. Like we need to have a plan. Number one, like where are we going? What's the ultimate goal? Like if I get you, like our ultimate goal maybe isn't to do walking lunges, but you know what I'm saying? Like if we want to get stronger, if we want to strengthen our knees, or we want to, just live a healthy and productive life, like I think lunging is a great exercise to be able to do for anybody. But watching their confidence, I think, is first and foremost, because I can tell some days when somebody comes in and they're like, I just don't have it today. Like either it's mental, physical, they're tired or whatever. Like sometimes you just don't have whatever it is that's like, I've been dealing with knee pain, I really don't want to work on lunges today. Like, you can tell when somebody feels that way. And so knowing that and having that kind of awareness, I think, is huge. But I also think, like, people want to know, like, the trajectory, right? They want to know, like, what's the plan? How are we going to get there? And trying to lay that for them, like, hey, we're going to start with this, but eventually, like, this is where we're going to get to. And I know that we can get there. Like, and having, again, that confidence for them when they don't have it, I think, is huge. But as far as what that path looks like it's a roller coaster usually. Like, we still do a lot of, like, single leg strengthening in general. So, like, I'll put them on a leg press and do single leg presses just to get them, like, unilaterally. Like, we need to get stronger in general, and that will help us eventually get to a lunge. So there's things that we'll do in tandem with that to get us to where we want to be, but it's really individual, like, very individual basis.
What are some, I'm thinking of, like, patterns. Like, what are some, you said, so squat is going to be one that's, like, painful and or scary. Lunges as well. Man, I'm trying to think of what I want to talk about next in particular. I'm sure that when you sit back and you said we wanted to talk about pain and psychosomatic experience, what struggles have you noticed, like, that you have? Like, when have you been stumped in the past 6 months on just like, man, like, we can't seem to get past this?
I think it's those nagging, like, injuries or nagging, like, things that are painful, especially for my athletes here, that just, like, keep popping up, and they're like, no, my knee hurts, like, I can't do that. And I'm like, okay, but why? Like, we need to get past this. Like, and a lot of times I think that's mental. Like, my knees have always hurt, you know, it's always going to hurt, you know? So I think one of the things that I would love more dialogue on is not only injury prevention, but, like, once you do have an injury and you've quote unquote healed from that, right? Like, preventative, yes. Like, when you do maintenance, like, my back will still bug me on occasion. Like, I get it. Like, I'm probably always going to have a little bit of an issue on that left side, but it doesn't keep me from doing what I want to do anymore, you know? And I think that is my confidence level at this point. But getting, especially younger athletes, I think, to that confidence level again, that's like, hey, you're gonna be fine. Like, this isn't gonna keep us from doing anything that we want to do. Are you gonna have pain some days? Probably. Is it gonna be annoying? Yes. But, like, what are we gonna do about it?
That makes me think of a couple stories that will blend into how I think this will help you and specifically anyone listening. The first one is, and I think I've spoke about this before, but in the first couple of years of working with people, I remember my wife had asked me, like, Clayton, how are you so confident you can help these people? And I was like, well, at first it's scary, right? You have this patient that comes in with this, like, wild intake, and you're like, oh my gosh, they've seen so many people. And then you're like, hold on, let me assess them, kind of clear their past and just assess what they look like today. And let's go find other things that we can control. And they usually show up with, like, oh, you're really scared of moving that left knee, or you have a lot of tightness in that right ankle. Your right hip is just weak as hell, right? And it's like, well, let's go fix that and see if the problem's still there, right? Let's go move that a little bit more, see if the problem's still there. And usually as you start chipping away, you solve 80% of their problems by fixing 2 joints and a muscle or something. Then you can get into, like, is this thing really that wild, or do we all have the same human body? And so I had built my confidence on helping people just by having a stack of evidence. And this is where it goes into the second piece that I'm going to use is there's a gentleman named Alex Ramosi who I really like his stuff, whether it be fitness, whether it be, like, business or whatever it is. But the way he defines confidence and, like, how to develop it is just to have such a stack of evidence that you've done whatever you want to be confident about that it's almost undeniable. And when an athlete is not confident in a joint or a muscle group, it's because they have no evidence. And the only evidence they have are pre-injury. Like, well, I was really strong and crazy cool until I tore my ACL. Or I was really good until I ruptured my hamstring, like yourself. Or I was really good until I felt that snap in my shoulder. And I tell you what, the brain does a great job of pattern recognition of, wow, I did that. That was the most dramatic pain I've ever had. Let's not do that again. So of course you're going to be, like, very apprehensive of going back into that position or picking up that barbell or throwing that ball again. So what you need to do is you need to make it so basic and easy, and then just gradually, like you said, progressive overload over time, that you can build back the confidence. And if you just shut down every time you feel pain, you're never going to get the confidence back. And so if you can visualize with me a ladder that's going to get you to the top of your house, and so let's say a 15-foot, up to the top of the house. If that ladder only has 2 rungs at 5 feet and 10 feet, like good luck, right? Like it's still a ladder and you're supposed to be able to climb it. But can you reach 5 feet tall and can you climb onto that and get to the next one? Like most people can't. But if you have a rung every 6 inches, you can make it to the top very easily. And so sometimes if you're wanting to get into squatting or you're wanting to get back to, playing baseball, like just jumping back into the game is a very poor idea. That's like trying to jump to the 10-foot rung and seeing if we can make it. But if I can get you first, let's use squatting as the example. Like let's just sit down to a 22-inch surface, which is like, higher than your average seat. Then let's sit down to an 18. Then let's sit down to a 14. Then let's sit down to a 10. Like those are the baby steps. Those are the 6-inch rungs. And once you do something over and over and over again with proof that it doesn't hurt, your brain is like, we can handle this. And then you just change it a little bit and you change it a little bit. And so that is the way that I found to be the most helpful in building said confidence, is putting them in a situation that's like a baby bit scary and proving that they can do it. And then you just repeat that process over and over again and you increase the load by 5 to 10% every time and you usually knock it out. Is that usually what you've seen potentially as well?
Yes, and it's usually helpful except for in the case of younger athletes who want to see results like now.
Gotcha. What does that conversation look like?
And I don't, my kids are very coachable. Love my kids. I think they're amazing. I think more so it's in like injuries that they've had in the past that maybe aren't necessarily fully healed, or they didn't go through the correct PT. You know what I mean? So it's stuff that just comes back up. It doesn't really keep us from doing what we want to do, but when we get to those higher thresholds, we're going for the 1 rep max, or we're at a meet and they're like, oh, my knee just gave out or whatever. And it's like, but did it? Or is it that confidence issue, And I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, if you are scared of the bar, like that's when injuries are going to happen.
Exactly.
And that's when things are going to go bad. You have to be confident. And this year, like especially, this is only my 3rd year as head coach here, and I feel like I'm drinking from a freaking fire hydrant every single day. But confidence in the mental game is going to be huge on my list this year, because I think that is, it's all we've talked about today. Like mentally, we have to be there first before we'll ever be there physically.
What do you think that's going to look like? This is one challenge that I've had as a PT, is like, I know really well how to fix something that's broken, or how to help someone fix themselves, whatever you want to word. If something's broke, I really know how to fix it. How do you stop it from getting broken in the first place? That's the challenge that I've had. Yeah. And I would heavily argue not everything is preventable, 100%, but it's reducible.
Right.
But like you walk into that room and you've got a bunch of athletes that you may have know or may not know, and you want to just like start talking about mindset, and you want to shape their perspective before you ever have to like fix anything or work up. Like, what do you say? Like, what do you do?
Well, and for Gen Z specifically, like small snippets have to be very small snippets of like, hey, this is what we're in. So for me, this year it's going to be a lot of like sharing just mindset tools and what, like if I find a reel that I absolutely love, I'm like, yes, and I'm just gonna like push it to them. Just bang them over the head with it like multiple times a week, because I think they need that constant drip of this is how it's gonna be and this is what we need to do to be better. But it can't be like it's not a switch, I don't think. Like mental confidence, building mental confidence, I think is just the same as physical. Like it's one rung at a time. Like you have to keep your promises to yourself if you want to trust yourself, and you have to, all these things that we know from, habit formation and things like that. Like it's very gradual. So
what are some phrases you catch yourself saying over and over again or repeating to your athletes?
Practice like you play is a big one. So when we're talking injury prevention, especially in practice, like you respect every single weight. Just like when I bulge a disc, like I didn't respect that 185 pounds. Like I just, it's 185, it's a warm-up weight, whatever. Like, no, we got to respect the weight every single time we step under the bar. So that's a big one for us. Safety is huge, obviously. Like they always have spotters when we're doing, RP 8-9 work. Like we need to definitely have spotters. So safety is a big one. But yeah, just reiterating, like follow the plan, and we can't max out every single week and expect to achieve great results. Like strength is not linear is one that I say to them all the time, because they come in and they want a PR every single week, and like it doesn't really work like that. So
the spotter one I think is huge. There was an eye-opening experience I had, I think my 2nd year as a PT. Had nothing to do with physical therapy, but that's when I remember it was. And as one of our quarterly meetings, we went to Top Crop Barbell, and we actually all maxed out on squat, bench, deadlift. And going back to the mental confidence, everybody knows who's been in the gym, like you're only going to push yourself so hard because there's a safety risk, right? Like, I mean, there it's nice when you have like bars there to catch, but it's still not the same as like this person will save me,
Yeah.
or just knowing how to bail and those kinds of things. Well, I remember I was trying to squat. I want to say 345, but I don't know if I was that strong or if I'm even that strong now. But it was squatting, and I remember halfway up, I started to get the, oh no, I don't know if I'm gonna get this. But Griffin, who can squat like 450 plus, was behind me. I was like, he'll catch me. Like I had this whole thought in like a millisecond of like, I don't know about this, and like, he'll help me, because especially with when you have a proper like spotter, they like hook their arms underneath your chest and help you lift.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, if I start to fail, he'll help me finish. Like I don't even have to worry about like bailing appropriately or anything like that. And I'm pretty sure I blacked out for like a half a second, like not limp, but I just remember like my eyes like going dark for a second, and I stood up, I was like, I got it, and he's like, I helped you a little. I was like, thanks. But again, going back to confidence, I was confident he had me, and so I was willing to push that. And so with the RPE of 8, if you're having your athletes push to the level that you're asking them to do that day and they don't have a spotter, they may not be actually at an RPE 8. Therefore, they may not actually be getting all the gains on the table potentially that they want. And so that's really, really crucial ultimately.
And I train alone a lot. I know how to set safety arms, and even then, like if I'm hitting an RP9 or I'm going for a heavy single, I will call somebody to spot me, because I'm like, I know that I will push harder if there's somebody either standing above me on bench or standing behind me on squat, and that's just it for anybody ever.
Yeah, you have to. Going back to the other thing on perspective and confidence, I think one drill that you don't even, I mean, you could be driving as long as you're not, closing your eyes during this, and you can picture walking down like a curb, right? So you're in a parking lot and you're walking down the curb. It's 4-6 inches wide, and you can probably do it without falling. Like you'll be like wobbling, your arms are going all over the place, but like you can probably do it for a while without falling. Now, imagine that same curb, but imagine it 200 feet off the ground. It's going to be a lot scarier, right? Is the task changed? No. You're still just walking down the 6-inch curb, but your perspective and like the potential of like, oh no, I could die, changes everything. And so you're going to start walking probably with less confidence, which unfortunately will contribute to the likelihood that you'll fall. And so just remembering that like perspective is everything. When you perceive like a bigger risk of falling 200 feet versus like falling 6 inches, it's going to change your performance. And the more you move with confidence, like, no, I got this, the more confident you'll be, the better balance you'll have, and the less risk of injury will ultimately ensue.
Affirmations, visualization, all of those things will be a part of
Tell
our
me
process
about
this year.
visualization. Do you practice it? Do you have your athletes practice it?
It hasn't been, we've talked about it in the past, but it hasn't been a huge emphasis. And again, this year, it's probably going to be a bigger one of like, hey, you need to visualize what you're about to do and see yourself doing it perfectly. Like that's what we want to achieve. And if you don't see yourself doing it first, the likelihood of you doing it is like, if you see yourself failing, guess what's probably going to happen? You're probably going to fail. Like there's very few times when an athlete walks up to the bar and they're like, I didn't think I could do that, and then they did it. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't typically work that way. Every once in a while, but so yeah, visualizing the way, not only if you can do it or not, but the way you're going to do it, I think is huge.
Like almost like watch the video of you doing it in your brain before it's done.
Yep.
Like legitimately.
And over and over and over again. Like it can't just be one time before you get on the platform. Like it has to be, several times. Like I do weekly before leading up to a meet, like, and I have a meet next weekend. Like I have had this number in my head forever and ever and ever. And I'm like, okay, in my brain, like I can see myself doing it over and over and over again. And that has to happen first before it's ever going to happen on the platform.
I think this is something that is like a small superpower of mine that I don't know where it came from. I think the way my brain works, I'm a very visual learner. And so therefore when someone teaches me something, like I'm creating it in my brain, even to the extent that my dad was telling me that he was telling me a story 3 weeks ago, and I forget everything that matters. I remember everything that doesn't matter. And he dropped something off at my brother's house, and as he was driving away, they stepped out and like waved and said, "Hey, thanks." And then he was telling my wife this story. He was like repeating the story to her, and he goes, "I was dropping something off at his house, and I don't remember what it was." I said, "You were dropping off safety glasses." And my wife's like, "You remember that of all things?" I said, "I remember things that don't matter," as a joke. And then I said, "Wait a minute, no. Here's the reason why I remember it. When Dad tells stories, I watch the movie. Like he's feeding me the words into my ears, but I am building a mental like story, or like watching a movie of the story he's telling." And I think that's just the way my brain specifically operates. But I think where that comes into like significant benefit is whenever I've had a competition coming up, like you said yourself, it's not that I sit down from 9 to 9:30 every morning and just visualize fill in the blank, like the meet. But it's like every time I'm thinking about squatting, it's like I can picture myself at the event, at the bar, under it. I can picture what the crowd looks like. I can picture what the judges look like. Like, if I could hook up a projector to my brain, I could show you what it looks like, me weightlifting. And it's not even intentional at this point. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, and here's what it's going to look like. And it's like there. And I think if you could get there as an athlete and you can visualize that, and it may take work for you, do it. Because if you can build that in your brain, then the synapses are actually literally already starting to be there, and your body will carry out that task. And there was research to back this up. One in specific, it's not a perfect transition, but when it comes to shooting free throws in basketball, they had a bunch of people essentially shoot 10, 20, 30 free throws or whatever, and they measured how many they could make. They went through, I think it was 3 or 6 weeks of some sort of training regimen, and then they had them all come back and do it again. And after they got their baseline, they split them into 3 groups. One group did nothing. One group visualized shooting free throws every day. So they never touched a ball. They just visualized, go walk up, bounce, 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 spin it in your hand, shoot it, visualize making it, do it again, do it again, do it again. And then the third group actually go practice free throws. The group that did nothing got non-significantly better. There's no change. The group that shot free throws every day, I'm pretty sure it was between 26 and a 28% improvement. The group that did nothing but visualize got like 24% better.
It's
Like,
crazy.
just visualizing the task helped. Because guess what? Your brain has to like visualize it before it can do it. And there's a lot of magic in just visualizing it first.
Yep.
Right? And so those people saw significant improvement just because they kept visualizing the ball going in, and then their body carried out the task.
All right, I
6
know we're
weeks
getting
later.
low on time, but like, have you read any of the research from Brett Contreras when he tore his glute?
Not at all.
Gosh, you got to go and find those things because he tore, I think it was his left glute, but he continued to train his right, but then he also continued to visualize lifting heavy weight, and like he hardly had any atrophy whatsoever. Like, it's wild.
That's impressive.
It's
So
wild.
some science on it. One, probably visualization, but two, we have something called mirror neurons. And these mirror neurons do 2 things. One, they're the reason that if you're a guy, you see somebody get racked and hit in the nuts, there's a reason, oh my gosh, like you viscerally respond to watching that video. It's because your brain, using mirror neurons, is visualizing what you're seeing taking place to you. And this is also huge why the environment you're in matters significantly. Like when you're around a bunch of like low life type people, you generally become them, right? When you're in a bunch of achievers, you generally become them. And all of this is kind of reflected into one. But the second thing with mirror neurons is whenever you have something on one side of the body, generally speaking, you will have a similar experience on the left. You'll see these phenomenons all over the place. In freshman year of high school, I learned how to pin flip, right? When you spin the pin around your thumb and then you catch it like you're going to start writing with a pencil, you'll spin it around, catch it, spin it around, catch it. Well, it took me a while to get it. The second I finally figured it out, I could do it on my left hand. At no point in time did I ever train it, but I could do it in my left. Less good, but the skill carried over from right to left. Mm-hmm. They've even seen this with dry needling. Sometimes when we dry needle someone's right shoulder, that area will get red, right? Because we just poked a needle into it, some blood flow comes. There's times where they've only dry needled the right shoulder, and then I've seen pictures of PTs where the left shoulder will have a red blotch in the exact same spot on the left side.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, and then there was another guy, I think his name was Brian Boorstein. He is probably the strongest nerd you'll ever meet. I follow him on socials, and he just does these like little experiments on himself. And he did this one where he only trained his right arm for like 12 weeks. And the left one, other than the one thing that it didn't catch up on was like stability and quote feeling of control in that left arm, but it grew in size, it grew in strength, but he never trained it. He literally did not train the left arm for those 12 weeks, but because he was doing it on the right, the carryover effect took place. And so if you are in an injury, tore something surgical, train the other side.
Do what you can, where you
Yes.
are, what you have.
Yes, exactly.
All the
And
time.
it will carry over, especially if you go through the practice of visualizing through there. And so I'm glad you brought that up because there's research to back it up. And I love when you hear anecdotal stories, ultimately to further reinforce that. Some things that I had written down that I wanted to make sure that we get through as a message is pain does not always equal harm.
Right.
You can have pain without harm. And unfortunately, you can have harm without pain. But I would argue, is that harm a problem necessarily if you can do everything you want pain-free? In general, movement is medicine. And there's even a study that showed movement is medicine is almost an insult to movement because it is so much better than medicine that you're almost insulting it by saying it is medicine because it literally far and away beats it ultimately. And another one, confidence beats caution. The more confidence you move with, the less likely you are ultimately to get hurt. Kate, is there anything else that you want to leave people with as a message for today that we haven't covered?
I know we didn't even touch surgeries and medication and all of that in regards to pain and injury. But no, I really do think just knowing that your body is resilient and that it wants to heal, I think is something that a lot of people need to hear, because they've been told their whole lives to rest, ice, compress, elevate, don't do it if it hurts. And that's just, I think, the worst.
And just to reinforce that, you've tore one hamstring quite gnarly, tore the other one at least moderately, dislocated an elbow, and you've lifted some heavy weights at a high level. What are some little accolades, if I force you to not be humble? What have you done on the powerlifting floor in regards of competition?
I would say my biggest accomplishment was I placed top 10 nationally at Raw Nationals for USAPL back in 2022 or 2023.
How much did you weigh?
I was 105 pounds.
How much do you weigh now?
I'm sorry to ask. I compete in 114 now, so I'm walking around 116.
Good Lord.
So yeah.
And then how much did you squat?
My best squat is 265 on the platform.
Okay.
Best bench is 192, and deadlift is 292.
Solid.
Yeah.
So if you want legitimate proof and another bit of anecdotal evidence that even when you get hurt, you can come back, and you can come back at a very high level. Because all of those, when did you hurt your right hamstring? Post 2022?
Yes.
Okay,
no.
Gotcha.
Yes. No, 2022. It was 2022. Okay. Left hamstring 2018, bulged 2019, right hamstring 2022.
For sure. So make sure that you're filling your feeds with people like Kate, people who are coming back and people who are going through or have went through injuries but still keep coming back, because the more you surround yourself with it, the more you can become that ultimately. And Kate, if someone wants to follow you, come work with you, how can they contact you?
I am at Kate Loves to Lift on Instagram. That's usually the best way to find me. Facebook, my personal page is Kate Jones. Foundations Fitness also is Foundations Fitness ICT on Instagram, and then just regular Foundations Fitness on Facebook.
Perfect. I will link all those in the description below. So if you like what you heard, or if you just want to reach out, ask questions, be a little bit inspired, or if you actually want to work with Kate herself or come check out her gym in Wichita, Kansas called Foundations Fitness, please click on one of those links below or just reach out to me and I'll help you get connected. But Kate, thank you for coming on. I'm glad to be here and also be here on the campus of Friends University. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Hopefully everybody listening today learned a little bit more on how to heal without harm. Thank you.